Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Journey podcast, the Journey show, all things the journey. I'm your host, Morgan Debaun. I'm here today with Melinda Sykes. She is an incredible entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and we're going to get into something that I've been personally very curious about. We're going to talk about franchising. We're going to talk about being an entrepreneur of multiple businesses. We're going to talk about acquisitions. The inspiration for this episode actually came from my channel on Instagram. I have a channel that's just for entrepreneurs. And I asked them, I said, what are the things that you guys are interested in? And we go back and forth. And one of the things is people said salons and studios. At the time, I was like, I don't really know that people who own salons and studios are really doing that well. It's a lifestyle business, and that's a blessing. You can make enough to pay yourself. But most of the salons and stylists that I know, or like even Pilates studios folks, like, nah, like you're not making $1 million take home. So
Right.
anyways, Melinda has a ton of experience, and also she came to the CEO Spring Break Retreat in Costa Rica. So I got to know her better there and understand her business model a little bit there. So wanted to invite you to the show today. So welcome, Melinda.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan Debaun, a passionate entrepreneur and life advisor. With the Journey podcast, you'll discover that success isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. I'm sharing stories of amazing people who've taken control of their lives. Join me on my own journey to discover the secret sauce behind reaching success with permission from no one else. Before we get started on your existing business, walk me through your background and how you became an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I was in corporate for 10 years. I was specifically in procurement. I was working for a large manufacturing company and kind of just moving through the ranks, right? I thought I'd be in corporate for a really long time, and that was ideally the goal. But, when you're in manufacturing, it's 24/7. So we're on call basically all the time. And that got old very quick. I was taking different job promotions within the company, moving every 12 to 18 months, right? I was in the hustle. I was in my 20s and flexible and could move whenever. Then I got to a smaller town here in Alabama, which is where I live now. And randomly, I wax as a client and have done that for years. And the closest waxing studio to me was an hour and 45 minutes away, right?
Wow.
So I was having to drive to stay up with my schedule. People that wax are committed, right? Like it's a lifestyle. So I would just take a trip to Tallahassee every 4 weeks, shop and do other things while I was there. But I was specifically going just to maintain my waxing. So that's ideally how it kind of spurred. It was like being first to market. I know a business model that works. It works in bigger cities. They're already doing this and doing it well. And I just kind of closed the gap with the need. So between that and where I was in my professional career, just looking to move out of that space, probably always knew I wanted to own my own business. And so between that is when I kind of thought, okay, well, maybe if we bring waxing to this town, it would do well. And more importantly, I know it's a need and I know it's a business model that works already in other cities. It just has not been brought here yet. So that's when I got into researching franchises because I had never owned a business. I'm not a licensed cosmetologist, esthetician. I'm not in that space at all. So everything was completely different. So that's kind of how I got started and opened my first salon or first franchise salon in 2017. So yeah.
And the name of the salon brand that you went with is Wax the City.
Yep.
And you now, many years later, second highest grossing in the entire company, your portfolio, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So this year we're the highest revenue generating
number
studio
one
in the entire country, which is so wild. We're in a small town that's probably 75,000 people, right? So
girls.
It doesn't matter. It's really about the leadership and owning that space and also ideally being first to market, right? So we had a lot of hurdles in the beginning because you're having to teach your client why they need the service, right? Because they don't have it already. But the beauty of that is if you can do that is you'll get to turn a profit much sooner and also kind of demand the market early. So yeah, but we've done well in our small town and all the things. So yeah, it's done great. It's been a huge learning curve. I will not, I don't want to sugarcoat that for people that get into franchising. There's definitely benefits, right? You're getting a lot of pre-made things that you ideally would have to build if you were opening your own business from scratch. It shortens the curve, but there's a good side to it for sure.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to how you got started, but just for context setting, how many salons, what does your total business portfolio look like?
Yeah, so I have a total of 4 salons. 3 of them are franchises and 1 is not a franchise. I have a total of 4 and we probably do just over $2 million annually in revenue.
And that's evenly across all 4, or do some things do better than others?
Yeah, so my first one does better than others because it's been open the longest. Now, just to put in perspective, I didn't open my second salon until last year, right? So I've ramped up really quick in the past 12 months.
Hmm.
So I think my biggest, not mistake, but I wish I would have started scaling sooner, but I was so focused on getting that one profitable and in the learning curve that I didn't expand until last year.
Right.
But in that 12 months, I opened three more salons or acquired and opened three more salons. So just putting that in perspective, but my highest revenue generating studio is the first one that I ever opened. These
Right.
other ones are fairly new and still scaling.
Amazing. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So you're like, I'm a corporate girly and I'm going to franchise.
Yes.
There's probably a lot of people listening to this that are corporate people. Like,
Hmm.
this podcast is generally designed for entrepreneurs, but I have a lot of people in the Work Smart community and the Journey community that are like aspiring to get to where you are. And they're incredibly qualified. They have a ton of skills. They're very smart. They're very hardworking, but they're stuck in some sort of like golden handcuffs or hamster wheel. And when I talk to these folks and I say, well, you clearly could do this. Like, you're not any dumber than anybody else. Like, you could do this. And I ask them, what's the issue? It's risk. They're
Oh,
like, well,
absolutely.
I have expenses. I've got a family, or I've got a car note. I have debt. Like, I'm doing well. So I don't want to get into a situation where I regret making this leap and taking a bit of a like financial risk and hit, and then I can't re-enter the job market. That is the main thing holding people back.
Yep. Yeah. And
Did you
that's
feel that at
understandable.
all?
Oh, absolutely. And everybody told me, especially my parents, because I had just bought my first house. I mean,
Ooh,
I was, making six figures. I was living the dream,
yeah.
exactly what they wanted for me and what I wanted for myself. But I knew that just, it was not in the cards for me. I was like, I'm very grateful, right? I've had a really great run in corporate, but I
Hmm.
know I'm willing to take the risk to get on the other side of time, freedom, financial freedom, right? How much money I want to make, right? If I want to make $500,000 a year, $1 million a year, I want to be able to make that in the time frame that I want to, right? So yeah, I had all the fears. I mean, I took money out of my 401k to invest in my franchise. Like that's the thing
Really?
people don't talk about, right? Like it's the big no-no. It's the big, don't touch your
Hmm.
401k and do all those things. But I did. I was like, I'm committed to this. I know if I work as hard as I work in corporate for someone else, I know I could do this 10 times harder for myself. And that's exactly what the first, I'd say, year and a half, 2 years looked like. Like I was working all the time. It was not glamorous. Not only that, I stayed with my corporate job for
Hmm.
9 months after I opened. And I look back at that as like, I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing because I needed the income, right,
Yeah.
to supplement. But also, I feel like the business didn't take off as great because I wasn't in the business day to day for those first nine
Yeah, I mean,
months.
I think it's a balance, but I did the same thing, so I'm probably biased, right? Like I worked it into it for like another 3 to 6 months after we
Hmm.
started Blavity, and then I took a consulting gig with Intuit, so I had my time back, but I was still making income,
Right.
and I did that for another 3 years.
Oh,
Like,
wow. Okay.
so I'm definitely biased, and I actually think that is the smart way because it gives you the mental security.
It does.
And I think as Black people and Black women, and like you did have a good background and you did have a good, like, you had things to lose, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that for the people who are listening, it is like probably like reassuring that, you can do both. It is completely insane. You need to time block yourself, but
Totally.
it can be helpful. So at what point did you then decide, like, okay, I am throttling my growth for my business because of my day job? Like, were there indicators or things that you're like, okay, there's too much friction here?
I needed to be in the studio, especially in the salon space, because you know how the salons are, right?
How waxing salons are. Because I'm like, are we still kikiing in
They're very much geeking, very much.
there?
But it's very much, it's just the salon industry in
Yeah.
general, I think. It's just a different vibe. But I think I needed to be in there to set the precedence of how I want that atmosphere to look like,
Mm,
how I want the culture to be. This won't be the typical salon space. This is how we do things, and this is how we
mhm,
conduct business. This is how we treat our clients. This is how we greet our clients. This is
mm.
how we show up on time, right? Like we just aren't for the nonsense of a lot of the shenanigans that go on in the salon. And so I think, when I hired people into that business, they come from the salon space. So they're used
Yeah,
to a different standard. So if I wanted to create a different standard, I needed my presence to be there a little bit more often versus in the evenings and weekends. Like it worked for a little while, but there was
right.
definitely that point where I needed to make the change. And so that
You could
was
tell the
9 months
difference.
after. Yep, totally.
That's
Yeah.
fair. Now, walk me through just the economics of like this type of business. How many bays or rooms do you have? Like, how is it set up? What do you think about when you think about like if I were to see a P&L, what
Yep.
would be it?
Yep. So from the room setup, we have treatment rooms. This is both for waxing and for lashes, which is what I own. And so we have 8 treatment rooms. Ideally, you're looking for revenue per hour. We sell services, but we really sell time. Right? Like how
Mm,
much time can I sell in these 12 hours that I'm open? You're trying to maximize revenue per hour based on your overall head cost versus time. So that's how we kind of look at the numbers. When we look at a P&L, we're looking at, like you and I discussed, we're subscription and membership based. Like our memberships is our bread and butter. We live and die by those. It's very consistent. And like you said, even for resale, it's the creme de la creme, right? Like you want to see that. So we have memberships, we have regular services, people that are not on memberships that come in and retail. That's our revenue generators. That's how we make our money. And so that's what we look at month end to be really consistent. Of course, I think a healthy studio from a membership standpoint is in that $30,000 to $50,000 per month revenue generating, right?
Wow. That's
So
a
my
lot.
first, that's a lot of money, right? So our
Yeah.
first studio that I opened, we generate 50,000 per month every month.
That's crazy.
That's a lot of money, right? So, but
Yeah.
it takes care of your overhead,
Yeah.
your employment costs. Like you are so far ahead for the month and it bills on the 1st and 15th like clockwork. And so we really focus on keeping our members satisfied, not giving them a reason to leave us. And
Yeah.
so, building out these other salons, it's the exact same play. Like I want to get our membership to a certain point to where we can comfortably, be open every single month without question.
And as a franchisee, what freedom do you have to like come up with different creative ideas to drive that type of loyalty?
Yeah, I think that is completely based on the culture and the atmosphere because you can go from one studio to the next and they look exactly the same, but the people and everyone in it operate completely different, right? And you're going to get a different response from your client. So as far as like what you can sell retail wise, you have no say in that. Like the brand says, these are the items that we sell, and that's to really remain consistent in our delivery. From the wax that we use, the lashes that we use, we have to buy from the brand. So you are limited in those aspects, right? And also, as you guys know, you pay a royalty every month for them to supply you with software and marketing and things like that, right? But that's the piece of the pie that I'm like, I don't really want to worry about the marketing and branding and all of that,
Right.
per month, right? It's a grind. But like the local marketing, if you're going to partner with schools and do nonprofit work and really get in your community, you have all flexibility with that. There's a give and take for sure. I think that's what scares a lot of people with franchising is they're going to be limited in their creativity space. But I think from a local perspective, you have a lot of flexibility, right? Maybe not with retail or with the services you can offer, but partnering in your community to make your studio successful is what you have a lot of leverage on. And really, I think it defines the studios that do really well.
And what about pricing?
Yeah, so typically in a franchise, they have minimum pricing. Like you can't go below this for this service. I have never seen limitations on how high you can go because the demand and pricing in New York versus Alabama, right? Like be different. So I think there's definitely minimum pricing across the board, but I've never seen a max.
Okay, interesting. How many hours do you feel like you spend per week per studio? How do you break up your time?
Yeah, I think right now my focus is on the studios that are newer. The older one runs like a well-oiled machine. The newer ones are different. They're in different cities. Like these are cities we haven't been in before. So learning just the cultural makeup of that city and the things from a local marketing standpoint that work there that don't work here is new. But I think the newer studios, their focus is of course the memberships. So it's figuring out how we can get to a certain membership number for us to feel like that studio is healthy. So I probably spend majority of my time focusing on those. But honestly, I just hired a director of operations. So like that is her focus now, right? Oh, the best
We
hire.
talked
Like
about that in Costa Rica.
we did, yes. Most expensive hire, but definitely I never realized how much work I was doing. So much stuff. And then she also works differently than I do.
Great.
And I need that, right? I'm like, okay, yeah, that's your strong point. I'm going to give that to you because I'm not so great at that. So I probably work now on the business a few hours a day, maybe, just not a ton. I really want to focus on expansion and, doing research on the next brand or acquisitions, right? That's the majority of what my time is in bookkeeping and CPAs to like the money. I focus on that, but from a basic, like in studio level, I'm probably not that close to it like I used to.
I mean, that's the dream.
That
That's
is the
the dream, my
dream. It
friend.
is, yeah.
So one of the exercises that we do during CEO Spring Break, and I always do this during Work Smart, is CEO task versus operating task. And I remember we were doing our kind of like, where am I at 10 in different parts of my life? And I think you were like, I actually only work 15 hours a week. And everyone was
Right.
like, okay, how do
Everybody
I
turned
get where
around. They
you
were like, let's talk. I was like, yeah, I
ma'am,
just,
you
yeah.
know, I think that
Right.
was actually really important because I do think as an entrepreneur, there is seasons of like you're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You're eating, sleeping, breathing your business.
Absolutely.
And the goal is not to keep that up, you know? It's
No,
not.
it's not sustainable. You're not happy. You're burnt out, right? Like that's when you're ready to like burn the business down. You're like, I don't care. Like,
100%.
yeah,
And I remember there was a time when like I was working less at Blavity and I think I was like posting more on social and someone was like, "Do you still work at Blavity? Are you still running it?" And I was like, "Damn, y'all, can't you just let me live? Like if Blavity's running on 15 hours a week of my time, like that's okay.
right.
We don't have to keep being busy."
Yeah, you don't have to like to feel like you're giving to the business like you should. Like you give in different ways. And like you said,
Yeah,
there's seasons when it's busy, right? When we're
exactly.
opening a new studio. I'm in there with them opening those boxes, putting up retail. Like it's just a busy season and, answering all the phones and all the pre-booking. Like there's a busy season for me to be present and for me to do some other things. But yeah,
Exactly.
I'm in the sweet spot of the business right now.
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, you mentioned acquisitions, and
Yes.
I believe two of the four are acquisitions. Is that right?
Yes.
So one is yours, one is franchise, and then two were acquisitions. How did those happen? What was the like scenario?
Yeah, so I think what we specifically talked about, sorry, let me clarify. So we've got four studios. One is an acquisition. We're in the middle of the next one. I think that's what you and
Okay,
I talked about. And we were
right.
talking about strategy around what to look for because you did a whole
Yeah.
session on
Mm-hmm.
this is the game
I'm
plan for
there.
acquisition. I did an acquisition this past September,
Mhm.
and that one just came about. I knew the owners just from being in the franchise together, and they were going through a divorce, trying to get rid of their assets, like just separate everything, and really just wanted to walk away from the studio. I had been to that studio before to visit,
Mm,
so I already knew what it looked like and all of that. And then it's exactly like the brand that I already have. I will say a difference in the franchising space during acquisitions is they come more often and
mm,
then more importantly, I think it's easier because you already run that exact business from how it looks to the software to everything. So really
yeah.
you're looking at financials. Do you have, yeah, the market and do you have the leadership in place to sustain it, right? Like to make it grow.
Hmm.
But yeah, that one just fell in my lap. I got a call from her and she said, "Hey, would you be interested in a studio in Oklahoma?" I'm like, it's really far away from Alabama. I've never
Yeah.
done acquisition. So, anyways, we visited out there, looked at the financials. And of course, as you and I talked, the cost to build versus acquiring is pennies on the dollar. So,
Right.
yeah, that acquisition closed in September of last year. And we completely ramped up that studio since then. And now it's profitable. And yeah, now I
That's
love
awesome.
acquisitions.
I love M&A. It's not easy though. It's not like always a layup. I think we did an episode on the podcast about acquisitions when I interviewed Charles. We did the acquisition last year for R&B House Party, which is now Blabbity House Party, which was the foundation for the festival we just did. At least in my experience, it's you don't know what you don't know, right? Some acquisitions take longer to integrate. Some of them are super easy layups. I think that buying a business in the same business model that you're already in is much easier than trying to add a new business model.
Oh, totally.
So that would be my advice for people who are like M&A. I'm like, wait, wait, wait. There's lots of things to consider here. It's
Right.
ease of integration is actually critical. And is that market already tested or are you trying to build and expand into a new market? So outside of this part of your business, one thing we talked about was also real estate and just your overall vision for yourself. Tell me a little bit more about how you're thinking about your life, Melinda, the CEO executive, and how you're designing your overall life.
Yeah, this is something you and I just talked about during CEO spring break. And it's like, I think now where I've been in business for 7 years, it's okay, do I have an exit plan, right? I wasn't thinking exit plan remotely. It was mostly profitability and lifestyle and all of that back then. But now it's like, okay, exit planning. What do I really
Mhm.
want to do? What am I passionate about? And I told you, I was like, I love real estate. Like I've built up a nice real estate portfolio. I love how real estate works. I like the strategy. And also you have the leverage to be as busy as you want to be, right?
Yeah.
Like in the salon space, it's like clients are coming in those doors every day. You're going to have client stuff going on. Like it's always steady.
Refunds,
Oh my goodness.
escalations.
Complaints and Google reviews and all the things. It's just a busy business, but with real estate, you could figure out which niche you like and flex it and then also scale at your own level. But for me, I'm looking at definitely business generating revenue as one avenue of my portfolio, real estate for sure. And then, of course, I invest in the market, right? Those are my three main buckets of
Mhm.
like an overall picture. And, at one point, I will sell my businesses and cash out and either stay as a silent partner and just have that as revenue generating for me every month, and then real estate as well, and then the market. But it's figuring out, like you and I talked about, what that number is, like what my
Yeah.
FI number is, right? And getting there and figuring out how I want to get there. If I want to continue to scale with acquisitions, if I want to
Mhm.
expand with real estate and all of that. I love real estate. I won't even lie. I love it. It just, I don't know. I think it'll be like my second phase of like my career that feels easy, like a
Yeah.
passion almost.
Have you changed your number? Your
My FI
original number, I
number.
think, was 15 or it was like high, I remember.
Yeah. So my original number, I think, was like between 10 or 15.
Yeah.
I haven't changed it, right? Like, I just don't know if I need that much money, but I do want to live pretty comfortable. It's just figuring out what the mix will look like. And it's like you said, just reverse engineer it. Like, how much do I want
Mhm.
to see bringing home every year? And then just work backwards. So I'm still working on that piece, but I definitely know the three engines of how to get there. It's just a matter of how long I want to work, how involved I want to work,
Yeah.
and then what areas of the three buckets will give me that level of work life, you
Freedom.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's listening who's like, what are y'all talking about? So this is what we're talking about. One of the things that has been really transformative for me and how I think about my own priorities at any given point in my life and the why. Like, why are we working? Why are we doing this? Like, beyond helping people and doing something that's good and putting things into the universe for just me, my family, what is my why? One of the things that has been helpful for me has been saying, like, okay, this is the kind of lifestyle I want to live. And this is the utility of the money that I want to have in my life. I want to use money as a tool. And what are the things I want to use money as a tool for? I want to use money as a tool to buy back my time so I can spend more time with my family as they age and as my child grows. I want to buy back my time so that I can spend more time traveling. And I don't want to nickel and dime travel. I want to get everything on the menu travel. Okay.
Right.
Like, I want first class, lay flat travel. Like, that's what I want, and
Mhm.
I'm not going to apologize for that. And I want to spend a month in Italy and have a painting coach and like become the best painter possible for me. My wants and desires are not just defined by work. And I think as an entrepreneur, for so much of our lives, when we're so in it, the weeds with work and with the business, that work becomes part of your identity and it kind of all encompasses your wants and goals and priorities. But true definition of wealth for me has been the 360 view of that.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
part of that exercise is like, okay, well, how much does this cost? Like, how much
Right.
does it cost to do these things? If you're spending a month in Martha's Vineyard and a month in Italy and a month over here and all these things, and you're going to bring your mama, you're going to bring the nanny, you're going to bring all these things with
Hmm.
you, how much does that cost?
Right.
And then you say, all right, like Melinda was saying, what are the different pathways to getting there over a 5 to 10 year period of time? Not over indexing on any one pathway because you want to get there regardless of the market, the trends, and what's going on
Exactly.
with the business. So if you just say, well, I'm just going to work this job and I'm going to get stock and I'm going to do this, and then COVID happens, you get laid off, it's a wrap.
Right.
And that was not an option for me. It sounds like it's also not an option for you.
Right.
If you're listening to this podcast, it's probably not an option for you either. So you got to have multiple routes to get there, and you sow those seeds along the way, and then you're constantly readjusting and shifting to make sure that happens. So like one thing that I've done recently, the stock market's been very good to me these
Hmm.
last 5, 6 years, way more than like the traditional S&P 500 averages because I've invested in tech stocks because that's how I came up in my career. So I'm like, okay, this is working. Let's rebalance this portfolio a little bit, de-risk it slightly,
Yep.
just in case. Let's take some of these
It can
gains,
be only good for so long. Like, the market
you
is
know,
wildly
like,
consistent. You know what I'm
let's
saying?
take some
Like,
of these gains and then re-diversify, right? I was over indexed at one point in Tesla stock, but thank God I re-diversified because it's like
hmm,
not doing so well right now.
nope.
Now I'm over indexed in Nvidia, and like, how much longer is Nvidia going to be on this tear? So the point is constantly reevaluate so you don't get stuck, which increases the likelihood that you're actually going to hit your number.
Totally. Yeah. And so when we talk like FI numbers, just that financial independence number, like, if that $10 million is going to generate me, let's
The
say
interest.
8, 10%, whatever, then I can live off comfortably,
Yep.
whether I'm traveling first class and all the things like the lifestyle we want to keep up. That's what you and I talked about. I think it's important for people to realize that sooner than later. I think
Yeah.
definitely depending on where you are in your entrepreneur journey, in the grind phase of it, you're probably not thinking like you're just like, let's get it profitable. We need to turn a dollar. But for me, definitely after 7 years, it's like, okay,
You
exit
got to have an
planning,
exit
what
plan
does that
plan.
look like? Yeah. And then also, like you mentioned with exit planning, it's having everything ready to go. Have it ready to go. So when you're ready to exit, ready to sell, when they come to you, it's not like, okay, well, I need this and
Overwhelming.
you got everything. You're ready
Hmm.
to go. Yeah. And exit planning doesn't mean like you have to sell. Maybe you just sell 50%, you stay silent, right? Like, you just get a check every month. I love mailbox money. Like,
Yes.
you know what I'm
Same.
saying? I love mailbox money. So whatever that looks like, it's just, figuring out what the exit plan is and having it in place when you're ready to do that.
That's right. It's like stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And that applies at work and in
Hmm.
business. And I've
Totally.
definitely been caught with my pants down before when someone's like, are you open open? And I'm like, absolutely not, because the idea of starting this process gives me anxiety because I
Hmm.
know how hard it is. So no, we are not. It should come back in a couple years because we're not ready.
Right.
I think that was probably the right decision for that buyer. But yeah, I think that's really important. Okay, so let's move into just some tactical feedback advice for people who are like, okay, you've inspired me. What is my first step? Literally industry agnostic, but I know that a franchise is probably right for me. I don't want to do marketing. Like, I'm not a branding expert, but I can operate the heck out of something. How would you approach that?
Yeah, so I would definitely, depending on the market you want to invest, if you want to invest somewhere close to home, like where you live, so you can feel it and touch it and whatever, that's maybe a good idea to start. And then look at what your city needs, right?
Hmm.
And decide, do you want to be in the food industry? Do you want to be in the wellness space, gyms and sauna studios, or do you want to be in the salon space? There's so many franchises. And then sometimes people have already been going to a franchise that they love. And so if you've experienced it as a client, that's a really great way. Like I've been waxing for years. I'm like, I know I love waxing from a client perspective. My market needs this. So maybe that's another
Right.
avenue to look at. But definitely, I will say this, when you get involved in conversations with a franchisor, do your due diligence. Typically, what
Mm,
that looks like is you're going to have a phone call with the sales rep. They're going to invite you out to their corporate studio next to do a visit. It's like an all day, it's called confirmation day, and they are going to do a full showcase. You're going to meet their VP of marketing, their VP of operation. You're going to meet the whole team that's going to support you, vet them, ask them very tough questions. Is the brand doing well and all the things? After then, you'll get your FDD, right, which is your franchise disclosure. And that's going to give you all the details, all the tea on how the brand is really doing, all their lawsuits they have in place, all their studios, how they're performing, how many open, how many they've closed. Like it gives you all the details of it. So do your due diligence. You got 14 days to review that or longer. Do that and just definitely make sure that before you sign up, it's a 10-year agreement typically. So you're signing up for the long haul unless you sell or something like that. But just make sure you're doing your due diligence with the franchisor and
hmm
feeling comfortable. If you get any kind of weird vibes or your gut tells you different, trust it. There's a lot of really great franchisors out there and there's some really bad ones. So, definitely vet a few. I would say that don't go with just the one that you love or whatever.
Did you hire an advisor to help you through this process?
I did not, but there is a ton out there. I just never worked with any. And I think honestly, when I knew I wanted to go into waxing, and there was only a handful out there, like there's some big hitters out there, but there's only like probably 3 or 4. And so there wasn't a lot for me to vet in that space specifically, especially because I knew what space I wanted to go into. But
Yeah.
I ended up with Wax in the City, and I'm really, really glad I did. Like that was a really good choice. And you want to look for franchisors that are progressive, like they're moving with the times, like they're ahead of the curve with technology and all the
hmm
things, because you're stuck with them for 10 years. So,
10 years is a long time. I'm
10
actually
years
surprised
is,
at 10 years.
yeah, 10 years
I
is
mean, I
a
guess
very
there's
long
leases
time.
involved and things like that, and that's typically it's a 10-year lease on different spaces. So I guess that makes sense if you're doing a new
And
franchise. But woo,
yeah, 10 years is a long time. And I'll say this, I'm specifically talking about brick and mortars, right? Like your
yes,
Orange Theories and your Jersey Mikes,
yeah,
and the Wax in the Cities and all the things. If you're doing a brick and mortar specifically, it's probably going to be 10 years, typically also because the landlord is
at
also
least, yeah.
typically a 10-year lease. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I got my first office and it was like a 5-year lease. I was like, I'm not sure we're gonna make it. Can I negotiate this down?
Right. Yep. Sometimes you'll see 5 years, but typically, of course, if they're a savvy landlord, they're going to try to get you for
10
10
years
years.
for
But
sure, for sure.
yeah,
So interesting. Okay, so pick a market, ideally something you're probably a customer of so that you feel comfortable with how that business is run and the product
right.
offering. Reach out, then they're pitching you. They're selling you, actually.
Totally. Yes.
Not the other
They're
way
selling
around.
you.
Although I've heard like Chick-fil-A is
Oh,
the other
that's
way
a
around.
different, yeah, Chick-fil-A
They
is its own, yeah, it's a totally different model. But yeah, it's them choosing you, like you begging.
They're
It's the
like,
other
this
way
is
around.
gold, and
Yes,
yeah, are you worthy? Okay, so then they say, great, here's all our disclosures, here's all our
everything.
dirty laundry.
Yep,
Are you still in? Do you have any negotiating power? Like, what are
you
the
do.
negotiating, like, what are the things that are up for discussion?
They're going to tell you nothing. They're going to tell you nothing's up for discussion, but we're in business. We know this is not the case. Yeah, you can negotiate all kinds of things, whether it's like, say you want to transfer or sell your studio to another franchisee.
Mhm.
There's usually a cost to do that. It can range anywhere from like $7,000 to like $30,000, right? just for you to sell it and move it to a different franchisee, you can negotiate that
Mm-hmm.
pricing. You can negotiate, say something happens to you, if there's a death or something, like how that transition should be. Typically they give you, I think, 9 or 10 months or something like that. You can negotiate longer or whatever. There's a
Yeah.
lot of things in there that you can negotiate. They're going to tell you it's not up for negotiation, but I would definitely say hire an attorney. And if you can find a franchise attorney, great. But just figure out things in there that are deal breakers for you. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned, they're trying to sell you. They're trying to get a territory sold, right? They want to expand their footprint. And so I just would definitely say, definitely negotiate. I mean, it's probably like 100 to 200 page document, right? Like it's a lot of legal language. So definitely get some help around that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you go, they sell you, you say, I'm in, I've negotiated, I've got a good deal, and then it closes. What does the support look like for launching?
Yeah, I will say there's a franchise fee. Those franchise fees, I think right now to buy the territory. So when you close or you purchase the territory, you'll have a radius of
Hmm.
how far another studio or store or whatever can't open around you. But
Mm-hmm.
you'll pay a franchise fee that's anywhere from I've probably seen as low as like maybe 15 grand to $50,000, right?
Wow.
Typically it's at least 30 grand. So you're
Mm-hmm.
already putting up a lot of money up front and you've got nothing yet. So once you've done that, you've signed the agreement. Support looks like first step is they will hook you up with a real estate
Mm-hmm.
broker to figure out all the market research where that store or studio will be viable in the market that you purchased. They typically will do like a quick overview of that market before they even sell you the territory,
Right.
right? But now that you're actually looking for an actual footprint, they're looking for traffic count and
Mm-hmm.
demographics and whatever that fits the specific brand that you're going into. The first piece is that real estate piece. Then, of course, you go under contract with the landlord with an LOI and all of that. And then they'll, of course, have recommended contractors to help you build out your
Build out.
store. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're in build out for whatever weeks. Usually it's between 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the studio or the store. And then you're in the grind of marketing and pre sales and all of that training. And yeah,
Incredible. Retail brick and mortar stuff is like incredible to me. As a digital girly, I'm like,
not interested.
not
Yeah,
interesting.
right.
Sounds hard.
I
So
think the service space is really important, though. I won't say it's hard to replace a service space, but I guess people could wax themselves and do. But
I
I
tried
don't
during
know.
COVID. It was not pretty.
Yeah, a lot of people did. We were slammed after COVID, and
Yeah.
we thought we would be slow because nobody would want us to touch them. You know what I'm saying? Like people would be like, "Don't touch me."
They're
Complete
like,
opposite.
honestly, get in there.
They were like, "Girl, we'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll wait outside in my car. You call me when you're ready." Like
That's so
slammed after
funny.
COVID. Yeah, so it's a good surprise. I guess it was definitely a boost for service-based industries and definitely the beauty space for sure.
Amazing. Final question. What resources or books or programs or memberships, are there associations that people should be a part of if they're interested in this? How would you advise people to like find more information for franchising specifically, or even like studio brick and mortar franchising?
Yeah, there are conferences throughout the year for sure. There's like the multi-unit franchisee conference. That's good for people that are interested in single units or multi-units. It's basically like a trade show where they have like every franchise around and they have a booth and you can go chit chat with them, but it'll give you an opportunity to meet the people that actually work there and for them to explain the brand to you. But you can walk 700 booths if you want to and talk to everyone from,
Wow.
Wax in the City to like a food spot. You know what I'm saying? To like get out there and it not be committed or anything. I would definitely go to a couple trade shows and conferences. If you are interested in a brand, I would go to the brand or the space, try out their services, see what the customer experience is like. And then also, you're likely to be able to hook up with a franchisee that owns that space and
Right.
ask them questions, right? That's another thing in the vetting process is ask the franchisor if you can have contacts for owners. And they
Hmm.
will, if they don't give that to you, red flag.
Red flag for sure.
Red flag immediately. And that's another thing. That's probably the best advice because they're going to be brutally honest.
Right.
Now, the brand's probably going to give you very high achieving studios, of course,
Correct.
right? But they're also going to be pretty honest about what the experience is like and what that looks like from startup to where they're currently at. So, yeah, I would definitely say go to conferences where you're meeting with people face to face, visit actual storefronts, and talk with them for sure.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Melinda. Well, this was so fun. Thank you for just sharing a little bit of your world with us. And
Yes.
folks who are listening in, definitely check out Melinda. Melinda, where can people find you? Where can they go to
Oh,
your
goodness.
different salons?
So I own Wax in the City in Dothan, Alabama, and in Owasso, Oklahoma. I have Amazing Lash in Birmingham, Alabama, and then I've got Alabama Nail Company that is in Dothan, Alabama as well. Come visit us, hang out with us, have some fun. And then if you just want to chit chat with me, you can go to melindasykes.com, send me a message, and I'd love to connect.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, y'all. I'll see you next episode. If you found this interesting, hopefully you do, make sure you're on our newsletter, which goes out every week, so you get notifications on new episodes coming out. Go to my YouTube channel and subscribe there, because you guys know I'm a facial talker. So the audio experience, I think, is actually still very good, but I do feel like video is also really fun. And then lastly, make sure that you are checking out Melinda's businesses. So thanks, everybody. See you next week. Thanks for listening to the Journey podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review and head to our Instagram and YouTube to leave a comment. I look forward to hearing how this podcast has made an impact on your own journey.